Toronto et también la difficulté de accesar o que es muy denso, ça va tout protéger quelque part.
Yeah, let's start with the artwork. So for the exhibition, I made plein air paintings. So they were made here at in Sierre at Villa Ruffieux, where I came on sort of residence/site study for a month in October-November 2014, and the weather was extremely congenial for the time. And so I made paintings outside, so mostly on the terrace of the view. And so it's a response to the view, to the light, and to the weather. But it's also came out of the reflection about site specificity and about artists in residence and what can you do. And all of this kind of discursive part of the study was going on in parallel, and there's always a desire to be making something more formal that has to do more with touch and also in terms of structuring daily activities of work, and I spent a lot of time reading and going to the library, talking to different people, interacting about the study, and then it seemed like there's a part of what I wanted to do that was more private and that was functioning on another time frame, and so these paintings came out of that desire, and the result in the exhibition and the result in the sort of project, the way it functions, I think is it draws a genealogy with plein air painting and turn of the century painting movement, and sort of reframing that gesture of walking out of the studio to be outdoors and to respond to sensorial experience. And so that seemed like a good genealogy, or a different lineage from the sort of site specificity via Miwon and land art and the sort of American heritage of the discourse around site specificity. And myself, I come from that also because I was schooled in America in the East Coast, but then I also went I went in the American Southwest to look at land art and also to make this movie that was about the desert and topography, and all of that landscape has been tremendously influential for me, but also on a physical and sensorial and material way. And so it was good to try to link all of those different historical movements in our activity and our research today. So yeah, that's how these paintings function, I think, for me. And then the other piece that I made for this show is a video. It's a 40-minute video that's based out of a conversation that I've had with two Peruvian artists that I met in Sierre. So one of them is Luana Letts, who's a Peruvian artist who was on residence at the same time as me at Villa Ruffieux, and so she was on an exchange program funded by the FDD, and it's a branch of FDD that's called Smart Sustainable Mountain Art. And so she came all the way from Peru on a 6-week residence and had to deliver an exhibition, and while doing that also sent work to back to Lima because they were having the climate summit there, COP20, and so that's why her residency was framed for photography, because it was the format that most facilitated this kind of moving of artwork, simultaneous study, sending TIFFs on WeTransfer. And I arrived here with, all of this kind of conversation and research that we've been having with the seminar and with Benoit and with the other artists, how can, and a lot of that reflection, all of that, a lot of what we were talking about, for us contributing artists on this project was also an approach to being sort of self-critical about how we function, what economy do we function in as artists coming on residence, and what are those expectations. And actually the residence within which I was in, part of the ACA seminar, was totally free and self-determined to whatever extent. And then meeting Luana, who was sort of struggling with all these different demands and her expectations also of coming here and trying to organize her time and making all this work and responding to the landscape. And she's obviously coming from a totally different landscape. And I guess that was the point of her residency, is this exchange between different mountain regions in the world, Andes and Alps. And so talking with her in this sort of privileged, co-living that happens in residencies, it seemed like it was really on the topic of what we were trying to figure out. And so I thought it would be really great to talk to her about her real project instead of me trying to frame my residencies within, because then it was either in another place, or my own residency here was more part of this research project and part of the school. And so it sort of felt more like, being a researcher part of this school, and less like an artist residency with expectations by the community or something. So then it felt more on the topic to talk about her project. And then the other person that I met here, and I was here only for a month, so, and the other friend that I made in Sierre is another Peruvian artist by chance. And he's been living here for family reasons. He, got married with someone here and moved to Switzerland, and he's been living in Martigny. So, he's from Iquitos, which is sort of the deep jungle in Peru, and then studied art in Colombia, and then came here and has been living in Martigny for 3 years. And, that's also super interesting. And so it seemed like a good group to talk about mobility and liquid modernity, and but also how does it function to be this foreign artist coming into this local situation, and how that work functions both for the producer, the maker, the artist, but also for the public, and how you're perceived as this and we talk about this in the video about exoticism, expectations, auto-exoticism, and sort of how you can use your position as maybe somebody marginal or somebody exterior to also subvert different sort of status quo situations. So that's the video, is a conversation between these three characters, Luana, Jorge, and myself. And it's all in Spanish, which I thought was also maybe another layer of interpretation that could be put onto this video. So the way it functions is there's this conversation that we're having in Spanish, and it's that's the sound, and then the images are pictures of Luana, the work that she made here, and then also previous work that she's made about landscape and land use back in Peru, and then videos of Jorge doing performances and actions in public space. And then we're talking about, those different topics that we discussed in the seminar, and then it's translated in subtitles by me. So it's totally subjective and interpreted subtitles. It doesn't translate word to word. It's selective, and so then there's different layers of what you can understand through language, through reading, and through also the images that also function on a different level. And that idea of translation, it seems like a sort of essential part of the mobility and what we bring in terms of subjects in these particular site-specific projects. So that's the video.
Bueno, la cosa es que desde que llegué y el proyecto tenía que ver con el paisaje, con el cambio climático, con estas temáticas de manejo del agua, de los recursos naturales, etc. Fui yendo de paseo simplemente con la cámara a registrar la naturaleza, ¿no? A ver lo que encontraba por el camino un poco, ¿no? Generalmente mi trabajo no es de esa manera. Generalmente tengo más tiempo y voy a la naturaleza, voy al espacio, lo recorro, lo vivo, lo percibo, y después de un tiempo sé qué cosa es lo que quiero de él, y recién ahí voy con la cámara y trabajo lo que me interesa, ¿no? Pero esta vez el proceso ha sido al revés, por un factor de tiempo, ¿no?
So going back to Luana, I think, a lot of what she's struggling with is about being this Peruvian artist, being in Switzerland, being super well received and sponsored, and being in these kind of conditions of work, and then sending this work back to Lima, and and being this person that can sort of fly over here and so on. And so I think it also has to do with it's the problematic sort of transcend even the pressures and framework of the residency itself. And then it does become it totally becomes existential about how do we negotiate and function within this global world. And so it really becomes about globalization and so it's sort of a larger struggle, I feel like. I don't know. I mean, for me, it's still difficult for me to relate all the different aspects of my practice, because I come from an agricultural background, and even before then I was in art school in New York City, and now I'm here. I'm also Japanese. I'm from, and I'm doing a lot of ceramics. I went back to Japan to study artisanal ceramics, and this is also something that I'm really trying to bridge between artisanal crafts and fine arts, and going through design, and I think really subjectivity and conviviality and sensuality are the things that are transversal, that you can find from one discipline to the next. And what's at stake generally in my practice is to try to create these bridges and to try to circulate sort of in a fluid way from one sector to the next, and create a balance, sort of contributive balance between different media, between different materials. And to me, it seems like an ecological approach to be able to work in performance in public space with dance and theater actors, and writing a script that's more about fiction writing or theory, art theory, and merging all of that together with environmental activism and so on. It seems to me like as an approach, it's what I was developing on the farm, which is a polyculture contributive ecology, where all the different species and all the different kind of ecosystems, like micro ecosystems that exist in the forest, in the field, in the water areas, and transition areas, which are extremely rich in terms of biodiversity, and creating a balance on the farm that's contributive so that each species contribute to the general balance. And to have a diversified farm, it really, was the biggest challenge and sort of the main ambition of art and agriculture and of the farm. And art also sort of was one element amongst, like vegetables, mushrooms, agroforestry. And so this approach that I experimented and discovered on the farm is sort of what I'm trying to put in form in my art practice. Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. It's also like in the same ways as Ricardo's drawings are really about performance and the body and the body as a transmitter, or the body as a, I don't know how you say it in electricity, but like you communicate electricity from one spot to the next, so you're almost like a wire. And of course, these are painted in that way, in this sort of gestural manner, and it's as much about impressionism as, performance. But what you said in terms of gesture, it's also recognizing what my process and what has been the most transformative experiences that I've had in relationship to matter, in relationship to landscape, and to the world in general, has happened through touch and has happened through sensorial experience, and then this resonates in the art, in the psyche, and in the in your thought process and in your process in general. But the idea is, the encounter with matter, the transformative experience, encountering material, and then what we do as farmers or as artists or as cooks is to transform that matter for different purposes. For you transform the food to preserve the bounty from the summer and stretch it over the winter. And it seems like it's the same with art, as you transform matter to make a sculpture for an exhibition, and this is a video I showed at the seminar, is when we're at the Salt Lake in Uyuni, and they're taking a piece of salt out, and then it's like this rock of salt that's sort of pinkish, and the pink part is sort of lithium and it looks extraordinary because you see visually the emergence of like crystal formation and so on, and then also you understand that the process, it's like you take it, and the process will be to distill it and make it into a battery that's then going to be in your hybrid car. And so then the touch is more or less technological to whatever level, depending on what happens. But generally, it is also like my process my process in general is to trying to link back with those, or to experience personally the different steps of the process. I mean, that would be great. That would be great. But I feel like it's, of course, because it's sort of it's about site specificity, of course, but it's also about different approaches to be like, all right, like I'm sitting on this, and like. So of course it's about sitting in Sierre in Switzerland in the Valais, but it's also about sitting on a molded plastic chair and like feeling that thing. But I mean, we can talk about one of a big project that I did is this ceramics traveling dinner party, and so it's totally about mobility and traveling, and I didn't frame it as a site-specific project, and quite the opposite, because it was based on the idea of traveling these ceramics, and that each usage of the ceramics. So we would have dinner parties in these different places, and there were also sometimes performances and sometimes formal exhibitions, but every time we had a dinner, like my relationship to ceramics has emerged out of the farm, and it has really been about local food and local clay, native clay, and the landscape, the relationship between food, terroir, and the vessel. And so of course it's also about like plastics, containers versus ceramics, and the central difference between one and the other. But the way that project has unfolded is that every time it was really about local food. And so like when we had this presentation in Basel, it was like the dad of one of the curators who did the food, and he got this one single lamb from the region, and then it was 70 people, and everybody ate just one of the same animal, so everybody had a different cut, and all of the cuts were cooked differently. So then there was different conviviality on the table also, because you're like, oh, like your meat is like cooked this way, like you want to taste mine, and so on, and it was served family style. So and it really has to do with this celebrating the economy within which we function. So you come in and it's like the curator's dad, and then it's the landscape, and of course like my contribution in this project is of course informed by my practice as a farmer. So having a dinner party has always meant to be part of the celebration of terroir, and so it's different in each place, but yeah, of course, then it's about awakening a sort of interest in the local flavors. And but the way that functions, it's like it's almost like it's not so much like, oh, if my project can bring consciousness over like a site specificity like that specific site, it's a little bit like I don't think my approach is not so much like the site research, more than generally a different central approach in general. And so then if you I don't know if that's making any sense. Like for me, going to the desert in the Southwest and living in the desert for a month and a half, just driving and filming the landscape and being outdoors all the time, and the sun and the aridity, and like just being in the canyons and like seeing the sand, the colors of the earth changing, and the colored desert, it has changed me completely. It was like totally before then I was in the urban context at all times, and so it was always like I didn't question the world. It was like the light comes from the switch, the water comes from the tap, electricity comes from the wall, and you don't question where it's coming from. And then you're standing in the desert, then you're like, wow, you're on planet Earth. And so then those Buckminster Fuller saying like spaceship Earth, that starts to make sense on a different level. That's not just intellectual. It's like you just understanding, through a more you just see it differently. And I think land art, it did that for me in a way to bring in this different level of consciousness. And I think that transformation that you go through, that I went through, it has been more efficient in terms of raising my environmental consciousness as than like any discursive lecture or it's sort of moralizing, kind of like, okay, separate your trash, like that is like goes in the same paradigm as like turn the lights off, turn the lights on, switch on, switch off. Like you intellectually understand it, but then like when you understand it on a sort of through your body, like farming and like eating this food that's still alive, you harvest it and you eat it, and the vegetable is still growing when you eat it, like that physical experience, once it enters your body, and your body is being fed by this, so then you have a different vitality and you're always outside. All of those things for me has been more transformative. And so in that way, yes, if my artwork can like bring in this kind of this different level of calling attention to sensuality and to a different approach to materials and to the world, then yeah, that's really that. I mean, that's what I'm looking at. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do, if at all possible.